In this video, we're going to go over how you can create uh, stories within Flow. So in the previous video, we went over all of the different views and how those all work. So if you're not familiar with those, definitely check out that article, that video, so you know some of the terminology I'll be using in this video. So to create a story in Flow, it's available from any of those views that were discussed in the previous video. It's really just clicking this blue plus that appears in the top row here. So if I click that, I can create a story and give it a name. So we'll call this one training sample. Once I've given it a name, if I'm a staff member, I may find that the status here is pitched and I'm not going to be able to change that. If I'm an editor, or if I have the proper permissions given to me on Flow, I might see the status is active. So you should see either pitched or active on there. You've got the deadline on here. Again, depending on your permissions, you may or may not be able to change this. But if you do have those permissions, you can click the date there. And if the story should be published sooner or later than that default date, just select that date on the calendar there. You want to make sure to select the section of the website or the newspaper that this goes in. If you have multiple publications here in your story tag groups, you'll want to make sure to select that. Really just make sure you add the deadline and then select the proper category section, fill out these different groups here. And then the last step is what type of assignments are going to be a part of this story. So, your basic story probably has at the least a photo and writing component. Maybe if it's a news brief, it's just going to have writing. If it's a photo slideshow, it might just be photography, video, podcast. So you can choose any or all of these assignment types. So we're going to go with writing and photo here. And then if I click this plus icon here that's right in the middle, now the story is created. So again, if I'm a staff member, it might be a pitched story. And so that will show up in the story list here, training sample, and it will show that pitched as the status. So if we're doing a newsroom brainstorming meeting, I might see a bunch of pitch stories. Staff's going to talk about them, and then the editors, if they have the proper permission, are going to be able to select that here. And if you're going to write the story, they might change it there to active. So that is how you can create or pitch a story. Again, if you're an editor, your stories might be active by default. So that's creating a story. Now, to assign or volunteer for a story, I can go to my dashboard and I would look at available assignments. So I'm looking at this training sample. Let's say I want to write this story. So I click on the headline there and make sure that it is the assignment I want. And so if I instead wanted photo rather than writing, I might click that tab at the top there. But I do want to volunteer for this writing one. So I can volunteer there. And now I've volunteered for that. So I'm just kind of waiting now to see what my editor is going to do. And so if I'm an editor and it's okay that Kyle writes the story, I'm going to go ahead and click this check mark. It is now assigned to Kyle. On the flip side, if instead of doing that volunteer system, maybe on your staff, you just talk through everything in a newsroom meeting and decide who's doing what. And so we're keeping track of it just kind of manually rather than doing the volunteer system. So let's say I'm supposed to take the photography story here. I can just ignore that volunteer button. And if I'm an editor with the proper permission, I can press the assign button here. And then from this drop down, I'll have a list of everybody who's on staff and select the person that story should be assigned to. So that is how you either assign stories or volunteer for stories. So now that I've got that story assigned to me, it appears in the Assigned to Me tab, which is going to be the first thing I see when I log into Flow. And you'll see I have the training sample story, both the writing and the photo assignment. So you might be thinking I'm responsible for this story, but it's going to be broken down into each of the assignment components. So now to actually work on the story, I can click on it here and it will show me important things such as the deadlines, if there are multiple deadlines, if there are tasks, something specific that's supposed to happen for the story, maybe interview the principal. I might see that here. You might also have kind of a pre-populated checklist of things to do. So if you like to check things off as you complete them, you've got that option here. But that's your tasks, different things that need to be done. There's also a notes field here that's going to pop up every time you open this particular assignment. So things aren't going to change in there unless somebody goes in and deletes them. So you might say, if I'm the writer, principal is out of town until next month. Spoke with vice principal instead. So now when my editor goes to look at this, they're going to see that note and know when they read it why I hadn't completed that task of interviewing the principal. So that's kind of all the different things there. If you are curious, you can also see your workflow here. And so this is, again, up to your editors, your administrators to kind of set what workflow you're supposed to use. But you can hover over these and see the names of the people who are going to be responsible for reviewing the story once you're ready for it to be looked at. So if you kind of need to talk to somebody, you'll know who is going to be looking at the story. So you can, send them a message. You could also use the notes field here. Lots of ways for communication. So when I'm ready to start writing this story, all I have to do is press this button to create a Google Doc, and it'll make a new Google Doc. And then I just press view and it will open it up here. You don't need to, create this in the Google Drive folder. All you have to do is press those buttons on Flow. And then let's say I've got the story written here, paste it in there. And when I'm done, then I send it to the workflow. We'll have another video here for editors of how to edit and all of that. So at this point, I am more or less, as the writer, done, unless I get a notification that the story has been returned to me for revisions. In that instance, I'll get a notification telling me as much, including which particular staff member sent it back. They will probably also have made some notes in the Google Doc or perhaps in the notes field here about why it was sent back to me. But if it is sent back to you, once you get it cleaned up and ready to go again, you just press that button to send it back to the workflow. And that is all you have to do on the writing side of things. On the photo side of things, you can press this photo icon here. And then I've got my photos that show up from the gallery. So if I uploaded the photo to the gallery, I might find it here and attach it that way. But I also have the ability to upload a new image here. And if I do that, and I can upload multiple images as well, but just put your name if you're the photographer, add the caption. If you have tags on any photos, put those in there, and then upload. And then I can select that, and you can attach multiple images if there are multiple images that you would like to go with the story. If it's just a single photo, you can also do that. But that is how you can add photos there. If you need to make any further changes in Photoshop, Lightroom, something like that, your photo editor might make a note here in the notes field for you. Similar to the writing side, you might have different tasks, different shots that your photo editor wants you to get, or the section editor. You might have specific deadlines that they're looking for. So again, these are different deadlines, different notes for the different assignment types. So that's how you can upload photos. one last thing I would note here is for videos or podcasts, the way that those get uploaded to the website is the completed product needs to be uploaded to a third-party site. So for video, YouTube is the most popular one. For podcasts, Spotify. So while these multimedia works, videos and podcasts are in progress, rather than uploading multiple files to YouTube, you would probably use the notes field here to note something like cut one of the video is in the network video drive in the January folder, file name sample01.mp4. So that way, your video editor or whoever is responsible for the video knows where to view that work in progress. Once they've signed off on it at that point, and maybe that's going to be a task or maybe it's responsibility of the editor, depends on how your staff is set up. But once that in progress file has been approved, you can upload that to YouTube, and then you'll be able to get the embed code, which will allow you to place it on your website. So those are the different ways that you can create stories or assign or volunteer for stories, and then how you can actually kind of move those along here within Flow. It's just a matter of once you're ready to go, you should see that green button to submit to workflow, and that will send it to your editors, and they will be able to work on that story until it's ready to be published. So that is creating and working on stories in Flow.